Well, David Mencer is the spokesperson for the Israeli government. Loads to talk about because there's been so much that has gone on in the last while. David, you're very welcome to the programme.
Good to be with you.
Israel is sustaining an Iran-backed war on three different fronts at the moment. Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in the north, and Houthis attacking from Yemen. Tell me what has happened in the last little while, because the Houthis attempted to, and indeed succeeded with one of their shells into Israel, and human error, it appears, means that it wasn't intercepted, although the Israelis have an incredible record of intercepting so many different missiles. And now you're attacking the Houthis. Just tell us about that on that war on those three fronts.
Well, thanks very much, Peter. Look, at 3 a.m. on Thursday night, early Friday morning, I myself, my wife and my kids were woken up with a huge explosion at about 3 a.m. It woke all of us up, where we live, the ground shook, because this was a suicide drone which hit very, very close to us, a couple of 5 minutes walk tops. And what I can only describe as a Marvel movie style explosion outside of our window. Look, these Houthis, they're a terrorist organization here, obviously, but they're also a terrorist organization in the UK. We calculate that we're actually under attack from the Iran axis of terror on 7 fronts. Let me go through them. You're right to mention Gaza, of course. Also, Hezbollah, also Iranian terrorist organization on our north. In Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, also being attacked there. From Yemen, as you talked about, these Houthis in the Red Sea, from Iraq as well, from Syria. So we calculate it's a 7-front axis. Look, Iran is our enemy. They see us as a small Satan, but we're only a stopgap on the way to the UK and the US and the rest of the free world. So no one should have any sort of idea that this is just an enemy we're facing. They're trying to defeat us, but only en route to defeating you. That's very important to understand.
I just want to ask you about the hostages. Of course, we never forget the hostages who are still being held by Hamas terrorists in Gaza. And Anthony Blinken, the American Secretary of State, says we are inside the 10-yard line, driving towards the goal line with a ceasefire and hostage deal. I wonder if Israelis believe him. There have been previous sort of false dawns on this. Of course, a number of hostages have thankfully come back to their families. But in terms of a deal, in terms of getting the remaining hostages back, and let's remember that Hamas terrorists are holding elderly people, they're holding children, they're holding women, and they're using rape as a method of war, which is just absolutely horrendous and to be totally condemned. What do you make of Blinken's comments?
Well, Peter, 250 of our hostages were taken on the 7th of October. We managed to secure the release of about half of them. There are about 120 hostages, some dead, unfortunately, already killed by Hamas, but some, hopefully, please God, still alive. Look, it's one of our main war aims to get these people home. All of us here in Israel are praying and doing whatever we can to get these poor people home. But I must tell you that again and again and again, it's been Hamas that has walked away. But the only thing which makes them look at this issue seriously, the only thing is harsh military pressure against this terrorist organization. That focuses their minds. That if nothing else, they want to save their own skin. They want to remain in power. That is not going to help them, because we're going after them and we will destroy this terrorist organization and we will get all of our people home. So, I'd love to say that we're optimistic here. The Prime Minister wants a deal. All the government wants a deal. All of the people here want a deal. But again and again and again, it's been Hamas that have walked away. So let's just be realistic about this.
It's interesting because there's a huge trip this week, obviously, with Netanyahu and so on. Very, very interesting that he will be in Washington this week. What's the goal of the trip? And do you fear that US support, which has obviously been so strong for such a long time, is perhaps wavering, especially when it comes to Israel's actions in Gaza?
So one of the ambitions of this Iranian terror axis has been to drive a wedge between Israel and the US and its partners in the UK, for instance, and they've worked very hard. That's been part of their strategy. So, Hamas want more of their Gazans to die. That's a key part of their strategy. They think that will turn the West against us. But I must tell you, the primary purpose of the Prime Minister's visit, it will be the fourth time that he will address Congress, more than any other international leader ever. But the most important point is, as I've said before, is that Iran are after us, but it's only a stopgap on the way to the US and the UK. No one should be under any illusions of that fact. So the point of this visit is to remind our partners in the US and to the rest of the free world that we're facing this Iranian terror here, but it's also your enemy as well. They think that if they can defeat us, that'd be one step closer to defeating the West. They're a genocidal, fascist-style regime in Iran. They've got their proxies around this region. Any country they enter, Lebanon's a good example, becomes a failed state almost immediately. So the point of the visit is to shore up that relationship with the US. It's our most important partner. We're incredibly grateful to the US and to the UK as well for everything they've done to fight off the Houthis, and France as well, who fought off the Houthis with their naval strategy in the Red Sea. But that's the key point, is to shore up that all-important relationship with the US.
I wonder what you believe a Trump presidency would mean for Israel, and specifically for the Israeli war with Iran and its proxies.
So look, for Israel, the bipartisan nature of the US-Israel relationship is based on two things. Number one, of course, the shared values that we have. We're the only democracy in hundreds of miles in either direction. And of course, shared enemies as well. I talked about Iran. They're our enemy, but they're your enemies, and the US enemy as well. So that bipartisan relationship is extremely important. That said, we're thankful to President Biden for everything that he's done, but it's ultimately up to the US to choose their president. We won't be getting involved in internal US politics. That's the right diplomatic thing to do. But of course, we always remember here in Israel that it was President Trump that moved the US embassy from Tel Aviv to its rightful place in our capital, in Jerusalem. And by the way, it was probably that US consulate which the Houthis tried to target. It was just meters away in Tel Aviv on Thursday night.
And he says he's the man who can stop World War III. He says he's the guy who solves conflicts, who prevents and stops wars. Do you think he could be a useful ally in trying to stop the conflict that's happening in Israel and Gaza at the moment and beyond?
Look, politics apart, I think the majority of Americans, in our latest estimates, 80% of the Americans and the American people are with us because they understand that we're on the front line of this enemy of civilization. We're seeing them down. It's very hard work. It's a tough war, almost coming up to 10 months now. Not a war that we wanted, a war that we expected, but we are winning, and this enemy will be defeated. And whoever takes over in the White House in January next year, we'll work with them because that's the right thing to do for Israel's people.
Okay, David, thank you. David Mencer there, who's a spokesperson for the Israeli government.